Janet Diane Moria Swerdlow, and I am here for the Expansions News Podcast for the third full week of October already. And as you probably already know, if you're watching Facebook or reading on the website, Stewart is now in Poznan, Poland. And believe it or not, our Hyperspace Helper book, which was recently translated into Polish, is now a bestseller over there. So that's kind of exciting, and we have plans for that to be published in German very soon, although not in time for his Berlin event, which will be this October, the 23rd and 28th. So if you're anywhere in Europe and you want to hear Stewart, of course, Poznan is over by now. However, his personal consultations are totally sold out, but there is still room in the Berlin event, although I think their personal consultations are already sold out too. But anyway, check the website for details and you can get registered. With that said, Stewart and I have been telling you that there is going to be an increasingly number of alien type of news stories out there and publicly. And so I've got a couple to start off with. First of all, you might have been reading about the discovery of a massive celestial megastructure, which is currently sparking alien theories. Some people are saying that this star could be harboring a giant structure built by an advanced alien civilization, and however, the scientists say otherwise, perhaps. What they're telling us, apparently a postdoctoral graduate student at Yale and a Penn State astronomer recently discovered a bizarre and mysteriously giant structure orbiting the star that's unlike anything that's ever been seen. Apparently, they're still weighing all the conclusions. However, there are some stories of what it might be, such as a giant swarm of comets, leftover chunks from a broken up planet, and it says last but certainly not least, an alien-built megastructure. Apparently, another Penn State astronomer has emphasized, just to clarify, this is a quote, "Neither my colleague or myself are advocating that it is an alien megastructure, but we also can't completely rule it out," unquote. Now, just the fact that they're even mentioning this is amazing, because usually what they do, if they don't want to acknowledge anything, is they just don't talk about it. So I thought that was interesting. And at the very end of the article, it says, listen to this, "The world won't be coming to an end due to a, quote, alien invasion anytime soon." So remember, what I always tell you is that they are putting out these subliminal phrases to get it into your head, so when things happen, you're not surprised. So I thought that was a very interesting end to this article. And then Buzz Aldrin, of course, is a world-famous astronaut. Apparently, there was something called World Space Week, which I guess that either that's a new thing or I've not heard of it before, who knows. But he says in honor of World Space Week, he now has sharing his dream for the future of space travel. He sees America's global leadership role in space as one that translates into being a global team player for space. Now here's again, we're seeing this global team player. They're starting to bring in this concept of the one world government. So keep these kind of terms and buzzwords and phrases in mind. He says this includes the U.S. collaborating with India, China, South Korea, and other spacefaring nations to strengthen an American-led international permanence on the planet, guess what? Mars. He says, quote, "When I look into the coming years, I envision a sequential buildup of a cycling spaceship network. The Earth, the Moon, and Mars become interlaced, and we will be a busy nucleus of people, cargo, and commerce that navigate through the inner solar system." Now, we also want you to spread the word, and this is something I've been noticing as I've been going through my news and collecting everything online, that now they're having just quotes that you can put on Facebook and other social media. So this quote that they want you to spread is, quote, "We need to spark global thinking and support for building a sustained human presence on the red planet," unquote. And they want you to post that on Facebook. So several articles that I was researching this last week are now, instead of asking you to post the entire article, there are just these little buzz quotes. Buzz Aldrin buzz quotes. Okay, if Stewart was here, we'd think that was very funny. Anyway, placing these buzz quotes on Facebook, social media, and getting that out there into the global consciousness. And then we have NASA, which has recently released its plan outlining the next steps in a journey to Mars. And NASA says, according to one of their administrators, Charles Bolden, that, quote, "Today we are publishing additional details about our Journey to Mars plan and how we are aligning all of our work in support of this goal. In the coming weeks, I look forward to continuing to discuss the details of our plan with members of Congress, as well as our commercial and our international partners, many of whom will be attending the International Astronautical Congress next week." And you can read that plan online at the link that will be posted. And then finally, we have a Temple professor, retired Professor David M. Jacobs, who claims that aliens have abducted millions of humans. According to him, extraterrestrial beings have been abducting and sexually molesting humans the world over for eons, all to create a hybrid race of alien humans who walk the earth unnoticed but will eventually take over the planet. Now apparently he is now a 71-year-old intellectual retired professor of American history at Temple University, and he talks about, quote, that he is a that he gives well-reasoned, articulate explanations and applies scholarly approach to his research, which he has shared in 4 books, which have been printed by well-known and academic publishers, unquote. And this is interesting as well. Professor Jacobs says, quote, "There is one thing that I can say for sure. They don't want us to know what they're doing because what they're doing benefits them and not us," unquote. So as I said, continue to watch for more alien type of information in the news, and sure enough, it's coming on mainstream news. It's no longer being ignored. I also reported to you about Trump, which is one of course, our presidential contenders for the next election, is now advocating for less gun control. Well, I told you if that was going to happen, then they had to have one of their potential candidates advocate for more gun control. And here we have Hillary Rodham Clinton, who is now saying that we need tougher gun control laws after Oregon's school shooting, because she wants to tighten regulations on firearm buyers and sellers with a combination of congressional and executive action. So now we have both sides getting set up so you can decide which side you want to be on. And speaking of officials, this I found extremely interesting about President Obama. And you might have read this one. This has to do with the Minister of Defense of the Islamic Republic of Iran revealing that he was in possession of documents containing undeniable proof that United States President Barack Hussein Obama had taken part in a top-secret military cloning facility program. Now, before I go any further with this article, I just want to remind you, of course, of his middle name, Hussein. And we also want to think about Saddam Hussein and the movie that was put out about his oldest son's body double, and that was called The Devil's Double. So with that in mind, let's move forward. The Iranian government has long proclaimed that the American president was of non-human origin, but it is the first time it alleges having proof to back up their claims. And he says, quote, "Our secret services have fallen upon critical information about the cloning of American presidents going back 20 years. He is not the first, nor is he the last. Obama is not of human origin. He was created by scientists," explained Brigadier General Hossein Dequan on national television. And although the claims sound outlandish, it is not the first time Obama has been accused of being of non-human origin by top international officials, claims Larry Silver, a political analyst based in New York City. Now, I haven't heard this before. I don't know if you have, but again, in my mind, this still takes us back to the alien agenda, so to speak, which our professor from Temple University was just talking about. Anyway, Larry Silver goes on to say, quote, "North Korea has been saying this for years. More recently, a NASA astronaut has claimed on his deathbed that Obama was the produce of human and extraterrestrial gene splicing," he explains. Now, again, I haven't heard this. If you find a news article, please send it to me. Theories abound about this kind of subject, he adds. Although the story went practically unnoticed in major Western media outlets, the press release created a shockwave in countries of the Arab world. Apparently, there were photos that were leaked to the Iranian press that allegedly show a secret laboratory where the clones are supposedly mass-produced. Now, I also want to remind you of the story that I reported on probably 2 or 3 months ago, just before the birth of Princess Charlotte. And that was that Princess Diana had another baby that was supposedly implanted into a surrogate, and that therefore she has a daughter who's actually older than Prince William and who was living in the United States. Now, as you remember, we have not heard another word about that story. So that makes me wonder about what's really going on. I also mentioned to you about Princess Kate. Was she really pregnant? And then I believe it was Soviet News, which I reported later on, that also said they questioned whether or not she was really pregnant, or was her baby implanted in somebody else. So lots of interesting things going on about this. You want to keep your eyes open and your ears open, and remember about how they put this net of information out there and then slowly pull you in as you get used to the various stories. With that said, moving on here closer to home, the U.S. The U.S. supposedly, according to the U.S. Justice Department, is set to release 6,000 federal prisoners early in the largest one-time release of federal inmates. Now, you also want to remember that we have seen people being released from prison early in other countries. However, usually it has to do with disasters of some kind, and usually fire. And I reported on that through the years. And here now we're coming into the U.S. Supposedly, this release is scheduled for between October 30th and November 2nd in an effort to reduce overcrowding and provide relief to drug offenders who received harsh sentences over the past 3 decades. Most will go to halfway houses and home confinement before being put on supervised release. And apparently there is a sentencing panel that estimates that its change in guidelines could result in 46,000 of the roughly 100,000 drug offenders in federal prison qualifying for early release, and the 6,000 figure is the first batch in that process. Now, I am going to be one of the first people to advocate for people who would have what I would call basically mild offenses, that they be released. What concerns me, however, is who else might be embedded in the release, and of course, the mind control and programming that goes on in prisons. So we want to keep that in mind. The Drug Policy Alliance, which is an advocacy group, says it welcomes the move, but said it was no substitute for a systemic makeover. Quote, Congress still needs to pass comprehensive criminal justice reform, unquote, says Michael Collins, the group's policy manager. So keep your eye on what's going to happen with the prison systems and the reasons for it as well. Moving on to Russia. There was a headline which caught my attention, and the headline said, "Who's godless now?" Russia says it's the U.S., because at the height of the Cold War, it was common for American conservatives to label the officially atheist Soviet Union, quote, a godless nation. Well, now, more than 2 decades later, history has come full circle as the Kremlin and its allies in the Russian Orthodox Church hurl the same allegation at the West. According to Putin, in a recent keynote speech, he said, quote, that many Euro-Atlantic countries have moved away from their roots, including Christian values. Policies are being pursued that place on the same level a multi-child family and a same-sex partnership, a faith in God, listen to this one, and a belief in Satan. This is the path to degradation. He also portrayed Russia as a staunch defender of traditional values against what he depicted as the morally bankrupt West. Social and religious conservatism is the only way to prevent the world from slipping into, quote, chaotic darkness. Mr. Putin's view of the West were echoed this month by Patriarch Kirill I of Moscow, who is the leader of the Orthodox Church, who also accused Western countries of engaging in, quote, the spiritual disarmament, unquote, of their people. Patriarch Kirill criticized laws in several European countries that prevent believers from displaying religious symbols, including crosses on necklaces at work. He says, quote, "The general political direction of the West political elite bears without doubt an anti-Christian and anti-religious character. We have been through an epoch of atheism, and we know what it is like to live without God. We want to shout to the whole world, stop," unquote. Found that extremely interesting. And of course, what would my news be without some Pope news? Well, we have here a New York girl, 12 years old, Julia Bruzzese, who is wheelchair-bound after a mysterious illness. However, when Pope Francis arrived in New York, he blessed her, and now she's saying as a result of this blessing, the doctors have found out why she's sick, and she said that a whole miracle has begun because for the first time, they saw Lyme disease activity in her blood, and she's attributing this to Pope Francis. She says, a miracle can happen if you believe. Now, we want to think about blood because I've talked to you about this in ritual, in the New World Religion, and the part that's going to play. And in fact, I have mentioned to you that in the Netherlands, that for Halloween they're going to be celebrating, I put celebrating in quotes, by a party that's supposedly hosting about 1,000 people where they're going to be spraying real blood. They don't say what kind of blood, but real blood on people. So as this article continues, you might also want to remember, this is another story that I reported on, that in March, the Pope was credited with turning the dried blood of Saint Gennaro into liquid in Naples. Quote, "The sign that San Gennaro loves the Pope, who is Neapolitan like us, the blood is already liquid," unquote. Now, to be canonized as a saint, a person must perform 2 miracles in his or her lifetime. So the question is Pope Francis a future saint? Well, obviously that wouldn't surprise me, would it? If that's what they decided to do. Maybe they'll make him our first living saint, who knows? And I've also been talking to you about the astral realm. If you're watching the Facebook fan page, we've been posting a series of articles which I have on the public side of our site called What is the Astral Realm? And I told you that that's also going to be a part of New World Religion. And I've also been telling you that there will be more astral stories. And there were a whole bunch of them out there, so I picked out 2 which I thought were the most appropriate and, of course, something new that hasn't exactly been reported before. There was a woman in Peru who apparently downloaded a Ouija board phone app. Now, I didn't know such a thing exists, but obviously it does. And apparently, the friends of this girl are claiming that she was possessed by the devil after using this. She began convulsing and was allegedly foaming around the mouth. Now, this scared her parents, who called an ambulance because they thought maybe their daughter had taken drugs or eaten something unusual, but her friend said no, that she had used this Ouija board app. So now, they're saying that she must be possessed by satanic spirits as her personality completely changed and she was speaking in a different voice and seemed to lose control of her body. So the medic said the young woman was extremely strong. It was difficult for her to control her convulsions, and she's now in a psychiatric ward where doctors are continuing to investigate her strange behavior. So let's think about that. If she was on an electronic device, it is very possible that programming came through some way or another and activated this. However, again, they're putting this Ouija board in front of the public, and the Ouija board just never seems to go away. It's always out there. No matter how many times people say don't use it or it lead to issues, people are still using the Ouija board. And as I've told you, it is a connection to the astral, and according to what I'm seeing here, if something has happened electronically, it's very possible that it's some kind of programming activation. So just be mindful of your choices. So with that said, the next story which I chose has to do about the legendary New Jersey Devil. Apparently, there was a man driving home from work when he saw what he thought was a llama running in and out of the trees lining the road. And by in and out of the trees, not on the ground, but up above in the leaves and the branches. Apparently, this New Jersey Devil is said to inhabit the Pine Barrens of southern New Jersey. And so he took out his camera and he took a picture. He said it spread out its leathery wings and flew off over the golf course. So I've seen this, so you might want to take a look at it. I think it's interesting, and let us know what you think of that. And Going into strange things, there is an organization, NAPSA, the National Association for the Preservation of Skin Art, has launched a program that allows people who like tattoos to preserve their tattoos post-mortem. For a price, if you have a beautiful tattoo, apparently this organization will, I guess, take it off your body and frame it, and your loved ones can look at it for however long they want. Now, they're going and talking about the preserving of tattoos of the dead isn't new, and in this article they talk about, all the tattoos that have been preserved throughout time. I was telling Stewart this, he says, why don't they just take a picture and then put it up? But no, you can actually have the skin. So again, think about, Nazi Germany and other things when they also did things with skin. So I think it's very odd. So, and not something I would obviously want to do. Puerto Rico is in the news with a new school uniform policy, and they're calling this a game-changing move. Apparently, Puerto Rico's education minister has confirmed changes to the school uniform code that allows boys to wear skirts and girls to wear slacks. It was kind of interesting because I keep thinking about this, boys wearing skirts. And throughout history, males have worn a variety of garb, and a lot of times they have worn long robes. They have worn, if we want to talk about skirts, kilts in Scotland and in other countries. So anyway, it's really not that new. It's kind of going back to the old. But as I've telling you before, it has to do with how we view our feelings about male and female, especially, of course, here in the West. So anyway, they say regardless of gender, the boys can choose to wear a skirt or pants to school without risk of punishment. Then the girls, of course, can choose to wear pants without risk of punishment or a skirt. Now, critics say that officials are stripping the parents of their power. I guess this is telling you that if the boys want to wear their skirts and the parents think not, perhaps the school officials have more power than the parents. I don't know. But anyway, they claim that the main goal of this policy seems to be the comfort of the students, whatever their preference of clothing may be. And of course, as we've been telling you about, it really has to do with you not knowing who you are, but them saying you can be whatever you want. And as you try on all these different personas, you really get lost in the process. So, of course, you want to keep that in mind. Now, I've also been telling you about the New World Religion, one of the things that, of course, they need to get people naked, and we've been talking about that for quite some time, and a lot of people are talking about how empowered they feel if they're naked, and I'm telling you, whether you have clothes on or not, should not make you decide whether you feel empowered, because empowerment comes from within. However, this was on the front page of AOL News, so I'm bringing this one forward. It said, what happens when these best female friends saw each other naked for the first time? And then it goes on to say, have you ever wondered what your best female friend looks like naked? I want to say, why would I wonder that? It says, you might have thought about it in some, quote, totally not creepy kind of way, unquote. Or maybe you never thought about it at all. Well, of course, once they put it in your mind, this is like the elephant in the room. And then it goes on to talk about how once you let your guard down and you accidentally see people, blah, blah, blah. But my point being with this article is they're still telling you to get naked in public. First your friend sees you, then we have people walking through New York City, we have people taking their clothes off. And they're all talking about how wonderfully freeing it is and how it empowers them. And again, don't fall for this. Your self-empowerment comes from within it. You don't have to take your clothes off to feel empowered. You have to have that feeling coming from within. And my last story, just when we think it can't get any more strange or weird, in my opinion it does, this is about a man who has tattooed himself to look like his pet parrots. He's a 56-year-old man from Bristol, England. He's already tattooed his face and eyebrows, and he has 110 tattoos, 50 piercing, and a split tongue. And believe it or not, I heard him speak. And he does sound like he has a split tongue because it's difficult to understand him, much less with his accent. Anyway, the last thing that he did is, guess what? He had his ears removed. Yes, you heard correctly. He had his ears removed by a surgeon in a 6-hour operation. And I've been telling you this before. What kind of a surgeon does such a thing to a person who has healthy ears? Well, this gentleman says he's never liked his ears. He used to hide them under under long hair, and so this was an opportunity. So now he has basically just like a bird. He has little holes with no ears. However, he says he gave his severed ears to, quote, someone who would appreciate them. So who knows what that means? Is it somebody with a deformity, or are they going to give it to the natural skin preservation, and maybe he had them framed for all we know. And then he goes on to talk about how that he likes to give people something to talk about. So maybe next time he'd have like a little toe taken off or a finger. And again, why they're allowing such surgeons to maintain their licenses, I don't have a clue, because surgeons have to be licensed. So what kind of morality is this? The next thing he wants to do is he wants to find a surgeon that will turn his nose into a beak. So as I'm telling you, is this a man? Is this a bird? What is it? People are totally confused. And just because you have an education, the surgeons obviously, or maybe not obviously because I don't know who he is, but let's assume, and that's kind of a loose word too in my vocabulary, but let's assume that he has some kind of a certificate that says he's a surgeon. Just because you have an education doesn't make you intelligent. It doesn't give you morals. It doesn't balance your brain. And as the Russians are saying, what is happening to the West? Are we morally bankrupt? What is going on in your life? Do you have to get naked to feel like you're self-empowered? I mean, please, people. Do you have to change your gender? Do you have to, go out and mar your physical body up to make you feel like something? If you don't know who you are, all these other things aren't going to change it. So again, I implore you, do your hyperspace, your oversoul work. Join our membership site where we do the majority of our work, and the reason we do it over there is when we did things publicly, there are too many people that will drop by, say nasty things, and move along. So for $26 a month, that's less than $1 a day, you have access to Stewart and I, our personal blogs. We interact with you on a daily basis. You have access to our video channel, you have Q&A, you have all this stuff going on out there that really is life-changing for the people who belong. We also have our Facebook pages, which we post a little bit of things on, and we can control that to a certain degree. But again, people who are frightened and afraid get angry. And you know what? If you're an angry person, no matter who you're angry at, it only comes back and it hurts you. The poison destroys the vessel, not what you pour it on. It destroys the vessel. So don't be a vessel for anger. Don't do these kind of things to try and find yourself. There are so much easier ways that connect you to your source, whatever you view your source as. So again, I'm going to invite you to please join our membership. If you're interested in exploring the things that Stewart and I are talking to you about, it's a great way to find self-empowerment. And believe it or not, if you want to sit naked in front of your computer, we won't know while you're answering. And if that's what makes you feel empowered, you better look at that, because that's really strange. I'm also going to remind you that our week-long January class, believe it or not, is right around the corner. January 2016 will be here before you know it. We have our week-long Hyperspace Oversoul Extravaganza class. It's a great way to interact with other people of like minds. It's usually a smaller class, a smaller venue. You can ask all your personal questions to Stewart and I. We talk to you about your personal information because we want to set you forward into 2016 so that you feel internally empowered, so that you know what you're already doing and how you can get hooked up to your own inner source, figure out what's programming and get through that, and therefore get information and increase your spiritual awareness, increase your support system, increase your wealth, increase your satisfaction with your everyday life. So these are the kind of things and the tools that we offer you in this January class, as well as every day in our membership site. And of course, we have a lot of public information out there, a lot of public articles on my blog. What is the astral? People keep saying, where can I find this article? Well, come to my website, check out my articles. There's a lot of information for free. If you can't afford the books, go to a library. They'll order them in for you for free. So I tell people you already own the most important tool, and that is your mind. And it is your mind, which you already own, is free, that's going to get you out of a lot of these traps. So don't fall into these things. Do your work, do your own research, take a look, know your own mind, know who and what you are, where you came from, where you're going. That's going to make a difference in your everyday life, not tattooing and chopping off your ears. Let's not go there. So anyway, with that said, I thank you for joining me once again Janet Diane Moria Swerdlow for expansions.com. Bye-bye now.